Hi everyone, welcome to a very special episode of Under the Radar, Over the Moon. I'm Virginia Stanley, Director of Library Marketing. With me today is a very special guest. This is Jennifer Barth, VP and Executive Editor and Honorary Member of the Library Love Fest team.
Who, we have to add, was lured here under false pretenses. I was told I was going to be in the Tiki Hut. So I'm a little bit cross with Virginia.
She's a little unhappy with me.
I thought I was going to be wearing a skirt. I thought I was going to be drinking Mai Tais or whatever it is one drinks in the Tiki Hut. And instead, I'm sitting here just regular.
Being all professional.
So,
well,
I'll be back. That's all I'm going to say.
Yes, she will be back. So, Jennifer and I are going to bring you some books that we're really excited about. Jennifer is going to start, and she's talking about books that she's been working on, acquired, edited, and they're coming out in winter 2018. So, Jennifer, take it away.
And I am going to start with an amazing debut novel called Peculiar Ground. Lucy Hughes-Hallett's name you may recognize because she is an award-winning British biographer. She's kind of like the British Stacy Schiff. She's written a biography of Gabriele D'Annunzio called The Pike that won the Costa and every other kind of award you could win. This is her first novel. It is a great English country house novel in the tradition of Atonement or Remains of the Day that takes place over two time periods. There is a frame to the book that's set in the 17th century in which the narrator is a landscape architect who's been hired to create the grounds for Witchwood Hall. And he is also charged with building a wall to keep out people affected by the plague. Then there is a 20th century storyline in which you see descendants of people you've met in the 17th century dealing with different borders, namely the rise and fall of the Berlin Wall. And how these people are involved in that, I'm not going to tell you. You'll have to read the book to get there. But it's just an atmospheric, rich, beautifully written novel that's received amazing acclaim in the UK and which we think is going to do really well here. We've already had two rapturous pre-pub reviews, and we expect many more. And we're excited to have this debut. And then someone that you've all heard of and hopefully have read before, but who just keeps getting better and better and better, is Alafair Burke. The designer who did the X also did the wife. We think this is an amazing package, and we did something really, really cool with the galleys, which I'm going to try to do here without being spazzy. So you see that it's his scandal, her secret. And so, yes, this is an extremely timely book. At the center of it is a wife who at first wants to believe that her husband is entirely innocent of the charges that are brought up against him, initially by an intern who says he just behaved inappropriately, and then by a woman who he worked with who accuses him of raping her, and then she disappears. So she finds herself questioning her husband, and also she has reasons of her own to doubt these women, and she has a very complicated past that she is really hoping to avoid having blown wide open because of her husband's transgressions. So it's a whodunit that I haven't had anyone guess it to the end. It's also really well written. I mean, Harlan Coben has a line about Alafair. I think she doesn't rip from the headlines. She's one step ahead of them, and that's how it feels reading this book. And we just got a great quote from Bill Landy, who did Defending Jacob. And this book has that kind of read, in addition to having this sort of Gillian Flynn, girl on the train, sort of pacey griplet thing. It has that who should you believe quality of Defending Jacob. And we also have quotes from Megan Miranda and Lisa Scottolini, and I think we'll get many more because she just gets more and more fans as she gets better and better.
And it is so timely. It's so strangely, sadly timely.
It's one. And then next up, this is where you get to see how truly schizophrenic I am. I have a sophomore novel by Iweala, who wrote the amazing Beasts of No Nation. It started out as he wanted to write a big American sort of novel, contemporary novel, sort of in a Franzen style or I don't know, who would be a good female, Meg Wolitzer style. And so he delivered a draft that was enormous and had like 7 plot lines and 14 different characters, and it was just, enormous. And it just wasn't cohering. He wanted to say too much in too many different ways. And so we worked on the editing of this for over, I'd say like a year and a half.
Wow.
And it came winnowed down to this very short, almost novella-length story of a young senior in high school Nigerian-American boy who is a golden child. He's a star athlete. He's been admitted early to Harvard. His parents are incredibly proud of him. But he's harboring a secret, and I'm not giving it away because you learn this very early on, that he is gay. And the only person he can confide this to is his best friend, who's a white girl at his school who has struggles of her own, but not of the same sort of dimension. And it's about their friendship, and they're sort of trying to come to terms with what Niru, our protagonist, is going through that has tragic consequences that I won't give away. But it's, as I've said to him, because he was still so dismayed about turning in another short book, Beasts of No Nation was very short, I said, look, this book might be short in length, but it packs a wallop, and everybody who's read it feels this way. I know the independent booksellers are over the moon about this book. It's very timely. It's, I think people who loved the Angie Thomas novel are going to find something to really respond to here, but also people who just love great literature and books that feel like they are giving us a window into the now of what's going on. It's also the most amazing jacket, I think, by Milan Bozic.
Love it. I love that jacket. And I find that very interesting that your conversations went back and forth for over a year on how to get this down to what it needed to be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and it ended up where it needs to be.
Yeah.
So that's sometimes the most fun kind.
Right.
I can say that for Uzo with the outtakes, sitting there. You always say, oh, you can put those in another novel, but you never do.
Yeah, just say you lost them.
And finally, this is a book that is incredibly dear to my heart, and I think anybody at Harper who knows me knows I've been talking about this for several years. I'll Be Gone in the Dark is a true crime book, but it is so beautifully written and so incredibly atmospheric and humane that it transcends that genre. And Michelle McNamara was working on this book, putting, I wouldn't say the finishing touches. She had a big meeting with the police group in Southern California scheduled for May 2016, when she suddenly passed away in her sleep at the age of 46. And some of you may have heard of this story because she was married to the comedian Patton Oswalt, and he was very public with his grief, very, it was heart-wrenching, the way he communicated, and also how his grief for his daughter. They had a young daughter, Alice. And then Gillian Flynn, who is a big fan of Michelle's, has written the introduction, and Patton has written an afterword. And what the book is the story of a killer that Michelle actually gave the name the Golden State Killer. There were two different offenders who terrorized Northern and Southern California over the course of 1978 to 1986, or they were believed to be two offenders. What people came to realize was this man who is known as the East Area Rapist, responsible for, they believe, at least 50 rapes in Northern California in the late 70s, early 80s, then morphed into someone known as the original Night Stalker, who is believed to be responsible for at least 10 murders in Southern California. So Michelle ran this website called truecrimediary.org, and on that site she would put cold case cops and officers in touch with people doing cutting-edge DNA testing, and she helped solve a couple of smaller murders in different parts of the country. Mm-hmm. She was like their clearinghouse, and also just the most incredibly devoted, obsessive crime fighter, I would say. Mm. But what makes her such an amazing writer is not only her just stylistically. The hairs on the neck, back of your neck will rise when you're reading this. She told me at one point, she sent me a chunk and said, "Don't read this if you're home alone at night." I was like, aha, I don't get scared. And I was like clutching my dog, in bed, because it was, she brings back that time of, late 70s, sliding doors in the suburbia, phone lines being cut, have you checked the children, like that kind of thing, in such a sinister, but not over the top way. And she's just an outstanding writer. But she also is just such a generous, humane person, and that comes through in the pages. So she humanizes every victim. Nothing is gratuitous in the book. Nothing is prurient. And she even kind of humanizes, she tries to understand who this man is. And then the book concludes with this incredibly powerful letter to the killer that she wrote that urges him to show his face and to come out of the dark. The title, I'll Be Gone in the Dark, comes from apparently with a number of his victims who survived the rapes. It was something he said to them. He said, "I'll be gone in the dark." And it's so poetic as a title for this book, given that Michelle, also is no longer with us. So anyway, this is an amazing, amazing story, and Patton Oswalt has committed to publicizing it, doing whatever he can. We have CBS Sunday Mornings doing a piece on it. The Times is doing a big feature. The New Yorker .com is running the letter to the killer, and we've just got a lot of cool stuff coming up for it. And it's one of these rare instances. In fact, I can't really think of one I've had like it where, because this is Michelle's only shot at being published, like everyone involved feels, this responsibility, and also a joy in bringing her to the public, to introducing this book and this work to people.
Thank you. That was wonderful.
Am I done?
You're done, but I have two to talk about.
So do I just pull faces while you...
No, you have to act like you're interested. The Flicker of Old Dreams by Susan Henderson. I've already talked about this book, but I kind of can't stop talking about it. I'll angle it like that so the light doesn't bounce off it. So this is by Susan Henderson. It comes out in March. Susan Henderson had written a book, a novel, a bunch of years ago called Up from the Blue. Did you ever read that book?
I did not.
Trust me. So good. God, this woman, the way she writes, is a really wonderful story about a mother and daughter, and just, it's still in print. You can get it. It's great. So I was very excited when I found out that we were doing another book by Susan Henderson. It is about this woman, this Mary Crampton is her name, and she is the daughter of a mortician. And so she has spent her life around dead people. And she is 30 years old. She lives in this town. It's a small western town, and it's kind of dilapidated. It's falling down. And so Mary Crampton is kind of this outsider because she lives with her father, the mortician, and she's fixated by death. And she's very sort of isolated, but she's comfortable in that world. And when this accident happens and the town starts to crumble economically, a kid was killed in this grain accident, and his younger brother was, they thought, the person responsible for this accident. So he goes away. And now it's years later, and he comes back because his mother is ailing. And he and Mary are both outsiders, and they connect. It's all about sort of being an outsider and like staying within what you know versus saying, you know what, I'm going to shake the dust off of this town off me, and I'm going to go and try and live a life. And so that's essentially what this book is about. But it's so beautifully written. God, I love the way she writes. And this is coming out in hardcover, paperback, but there's a hardcover library edition that we're doing just for this one. I have some wonderful quotes. I could read all of them to you, but I'm just going to read a couple because they're so much more eloquent than I could ever dream to be in my imaginary tiki hut. Caroline Leavitt, New York Times bestselling author of Cruel, Beautiful World, says, "This novel is so breathtakingly good, so exquisitely written, about a female mortician, about a childhood tragedy that still haunts a damaged young man, about the endless landscape, and about those tiny sparks of possibility. Oh my God, trust me, this book, this book, this book." And Jonathan Evison, who wrote West of Here and the Revised Fundamentals of Caregiving, writes, "If Shirley Jackson and Kent Harroff had a love child, she might write like Susan Henderson." I could go on, but please just trust me, and read this book, and you will love it, and then go read Up from the Blue, and you will love that too. I'm sold. See? The next book I'm going to talk about, and then I think we're done, The Magnificent Esme Wells by Adrienne Sharp, goes on sale in April of 2018. This is by the author of The True Memoirs of Little Kay, And this is a really charming story about the daughter of a two-bit gangster and a movie showgirl. And it's about growing up in Golden Age Hollywood and Las Vegas in its early days. So the story is told by this 20-year-old version of this kid. So she's looking back and she's telling this really wonderful story about, like, it goes back between pre-World War II Hollywood and post-war Las Vegas, and these crazy characters and the shiftiness that goes on there. And there's a lot of historical research that goes on because the author has really done her homework. And so while it's a novel, she really does have all of her facts straight about the building of the Sands and the death of Bugsy Siegel and pre-war Hollywood political activism. She throws in Judy Garland and Jimmy Durante, and she throws in all these characters who were there at the time. And so it kind of reminded me a little bit of Paper Moon, you know, where the kid is at the heart of the story, and the father's kind of shifty. It's all very tender and endearing, and just wonderfully, beautifully written characters. More great quotes. What'll I tell you? I'll tell you that Anne Hood, okay, this is a great quote. Anne Hood, author of The Book That Matters Most and The Knitting Circle, says, "Consider it your good luck to join Esme Wells as she comes of age with the glamour, gangsters, and big dreams of Hollywood and Las Vegas of the 30s and 40s. This novel is magnificent." And I couldn't agree more. It's really beautifully written and fun and sweet, and I love a coming of age more than life itself. So I'm a little bit, I don't know. I'm just in love with it. So I'm in love with all these books. I love Jennifer Barth, our honorary member of the Library Love Fest. I'm sorry about the Tiki Hut.
I think you just forgot future Tiki Hut guest. That's all you had to say.
Next time we will be sitting in a Tiki Hut, and I'm going to plug in that blender and make you drink a lot of tequila.
I'm going to hold you to it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So long, kids.